So this is the new camera, and I hope that it brings you more clarity in watching the videos. I know a lot of people have said a lot of comments about it, and it's like, I wasn't really worried about the presentation, so to speak. I was more worried about the information getting out there to you. So I would do the videos whenever I had a chance, load them up, put them up on YouTube, and that would be it. But I do realize that you all deserve the very best quality, so I hope that this is much more clearer. I do see, even watching now as I'm recording, that I got some static up there. I guess it's just something I can't avoid, but hey, at least we can see one another a lot better, right? So this video is going to be about parenting, and this was actually requested by one of my viewers because it is difficult to be a spiritual parent. And to differentiate, between being a parent and a spiritual person. We expect our children to conform to the ways that we do things, the ideas that we have in regards to spiritual stuff. So this video is going to be a little bit about how I do things because, you could relate, or maybe things are different for you. If they are, feel free to comment and I'll definitely help you out. But I think for the most part, everybody will be able to relate. Okay, so let me start by saying that growing up, I was always very spiritual. I wanted to be with God or creator or source in every single way that I possibly could. And you all know that there are many creators, goes from source down the line throughout our beautiful network of light. And so I always felt this direct connection to the creator and then to source as well. And I really wanted a way to define this heavenly message. Now, I know that people will say, well, some of it sounds like this or some of it sounds like that. Well, yeah, it does, because these are particles, like little tiny fractals of information that I'm picking up from different places that I know correspond with what's said out there. So it may seem similar, but altogether, it is a totally different message when we get to the very end of it. And that's why I'm doing this. I'm trying to kind of put it together and get it into like little segments, and then all of you are learning as you go, as I'm trying to help you learn as I go. So it is a lot of extreme light work, but as a kid, all that I wanted was to be able to find all those little fractals, to just be able to say, okay, that sounds like what I know from my experience as an angel, so I'm going to grab that. And that sounds like, what I know from being an angel, and I'm going to grab that and then put it all together. So when I was growing up, I read all these books. I read everything. I was the dorkiest kid in the world. I'm telling you, people hated me. You guys know that. I put that up in another video. But yeah, they picked on me. I was always the little girl up in her room all alone reading her spiritual books. And it was the weirdest thing because my parents weren't like that. They did not have any spiritual background whatsoever. They didn't. I would talk about it, read about it. Nobody had an interest. I don't even know like how my parents didn't somehow say, wow, this is, really weird. But in any case, I really felt that connection. It was my only friend was God or creator or source. And I really just always wanted to be in that presence. So finding those tidbits of information really made me feel at home, especially in this world, because coming here, it was like I only knew unconditional love. And seeing how mean and cruel people can be, it wasn't that I was mad or judging or anything. I didn't feel those feelings. What I felt was this curiosity as to why, why do people act this way? Why are they so closed-minded? I know why. I know why while I'm asking myself this, but at the same time, it just seems so much easy to me. I guess it's because I've always been awake, you know what I mean? And looking at other people that aren't, it's like if they only knew, and they only knew how easy it was, they could be the same way. And it just was never there in anybody. So growing up, my aunt and my cousins, they lived across the street, and my Aunt Helen, she was a O negative blood type, and you guys know that I'm AB negative. And it was really fitting that she ended up getting involved in a group called the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I remember that this was like the only time I ever noticed anybody in my entire family taking an interest in anything spiritual. Like, excuse me, there was no Catholic church, there was no Christian church, there was absolutely nothing. It was void. It was just void, and I was the only one. So when my aunt started getting involved with the witnesses, I was like, wow, you know, finally somebody that's going to be involved in spirituality, someone in my family. And I'm thinking, well, my cousins, they're going to go along with it because their mom's going to introduce them. And at least we'll have something in common, you know, maybe a little something, some kind of similarity or foundation or whatever. So I always felt, oh my gosh, now I'm going to have friends, you know. Well, I started to read some of those books, and I remember, you know, really liking a lot of the information. They do have some real truthful stuff there, but there was always something underlyingly, you know. And I remember I would talk to the creator and I would say, what is this? And he would tell me, it's them. That's what he would say. It's them. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And I knew what that meant because, you know, when I was told it's them, it meant, you know, the powers and principalities of the air working through the humans. So I was like, oh, all right. So, you know, do I not read this? And he would say, read it, but know the difference. And I remember like always being told there's truth in this, but there's also lies. And I had to use, you know, that direction that the creator gave me to discern the difference between the two. And it never steered me wrong. You know, the creator always walked me along. So in any case, my cousins, you know, I always thought, wow, I think I'm in the wrong family here because they don't celebrate holidays, which, you know, really man-made holidays. They don't really go along with anything divine because these are all holidays attributed to, you know, those that took over this planet to rule it, setting up these celebrations in many different civilizations through Project Babylon. And so I didn't want anything to do with them. But my cousins would cry and they would say, oh, we don't celebrate holidays. We're not like the other kids. And I understood that too because I was also struggling to fit in. Coming from that place of unconditional love, just not understanding, you know, the way that people were, understanding it, but not accepting it, I guess. Because I really always saw something better out there for everybody. But I knew that they were trying to fit in, and I was like, okay, I get it. But at the same time, I was like, man, if they had some kind of level of understanding or knowing, you know, from the creator itself, they would understand that these are man-made holidays. But in any case, you know, my aunt, she was very strict, and I remember how unhappy they were, and they didn't feel like they fit in at all. And they grew up emotionally disturbed. So now it comes down to this, you know, I don't really do the same thing to my children. I think it's wrong because here's the deal. Even though they may not understand at that level and capacity, they still have the right to use self-expression. It's through experiencing. It's through, you know, trying out different things that they learn who they are. So what I do with my own children, I do talk to them. I tell them, look, this is what this really means. This is what this really symbolizes. And then they'll ask me, well, how does the creator feel about this, Mom? And I'll say, well, the creator doesn't like this too much. And I say he doesn't like it, which really, you know, he couldn't be bothered with mundane things. The only thing that the creator really worries about is love, purity, goodness to others, service to others. So really anything that is of any kind of other nature, it's just all earthly, really, to say. So I would just say that anyway because, you know, it is hurtful to go towards the fallen angel group and teachings and ceremonies and rituals and holidays. It really is because the creator wants people to become enlightened, not to go celebrating things that lead you to being closed-minded, towards being judgmental, or giving them any kind of honor or glory, because once you glorify them, you know, that's when they feel that they have that opening to come in and control your life. So for me, I never really prohibit them. I just allow them to understand. And I talk to them and I tell them exactly, you know, how the creator views it, you know, what the truth is. And then I say, now you can decide what you'd like to do with it. Now, as far as, you know, disciplining them, I don't believe in forcing your children to do anything that they don't want to do. I feel that even though that they're small, how do you know that in that little body it isn't an old soul? How do you know that that isn't some wise, intelligent being inside of that small, innocent creature. You don't. And so you can't really treat them as if they're unequal. You can't. You have to read the soul, not the age. And it goes like that in many, many different age groups. Like, you know, just because somebody is an adult doesn't mean that they're mature. They could be totally immature and be like a child soul inside of there and make all kinds of mistakes, never learn. So I treat my children like equals. I let them have a voice. We sit down. We talk about it. How do you feel about this? How do you think this should go? And we work together as a collective. Now, that may not work with all children because as a psychologist, I also know that children will take that for granted. They really will. They'll sit there and they'll think that you're giving them power and they'll try to exert that power. Now, I have that trouble with my son, Noah. Noah is one of those children. He's very hyperactive. He is very much centered in his own little world, and so giving him any kind of power or kindness, he will think that that gives him some level of superiority. But he's trying, but he does have a great big heart, and he does want to learn. It's just trying to understand, you know, probably like, you know, why things are the way that they are in this world. So I have to talk to him a lot, and I have to tell him, you know, Noah, Mommy doesn't think this is right. You have to understand other people have feelings, other people have boundaries. And even though he may not get it now, he will later on. You have to always remember that. You know, your kid may not be hearing you. It may be aggravation, but who's the aggravation towards, really? If you are a starseed or an angelic or any kind of spiritual being, then you should always have the one virtue of patience. And so even if you have to repeat yourself, even if it takes forever, you just know that everything that you're telling your child now, whether it doesn't work or not now, it will later. It'll always be in the back of their mind, and they will get it. They will apply it. It'll come later on, but it will work. So I don't enforce discipline. I do not smack my children. I don't believe in taking away their items. You know, people will say, hey, you know, Allie, your son is totally out of control. Why don't you take away his toys or something that he likes and teach him a lesson? That's torture. You know, how would you like it if you had something that you loved and it was the only thing that you really cared about in the whole world, and just because you weren't doing something that somebody wanted, you know, it got taken away from you? Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, she's crazy. You know, kids have to have some kind of structure and discipline. But for me, I just always believed that if you just explain to your child, and again, if they don't get it, you teach them. So let me give you an example of how, so that you don't think that I'm not disciplining my children, but you'll understand how I do. Now, for an example, when it comes to my son, if he is not listening to me, then I won't help him. He's on his own. He has to try on his own. So for an example, he will say, Mom, get me a drink. No, Noah, Mommy is very busy. Go get your own drink. And then he'll say, no, you get it. And I'll say, no, Noah, Mommy said, go get your own drink. And then he'll say, no, I'm really thirsty. And I'll say, well, if you're thirsty, then you'll get your own drink. And he'll sit there crying, complaining. And I'll tell him, well, it looks like you don't really want a drink, because if you wanted one that bad, you'd get up and get it. So now you're going to stay thirsty. You have to get into their mind and make them think, just like with tying his shoes. Noah, tie your own shoes. No, you tie them. I don't know how. Well, learn how. I don't want to learn how. Why don't you want to learn how? Don't you want to be smart? And then if he doesn't tie them, then I'll send him to school with his shoes untied. And then when his teacher's telling him, Noah, your shoes, or his classmates, then he'll have to bend down and he'll have to tie them himself. He has to learn that you have to do things on your own. And so by not doing it for him, but being kind, being patient, no, I'm not doing this. You need to. That's exerting your authority, but you're also using this teacher type of ability. You're teaching them that there is consequences. The consequences aren't that you're going to get your butt beat. The consequences aren't that I'm going to take away your most beloved item, or that you're going to stay in your room for a week. The consequences are that if you don't do this, then you don't learn this, and then you're on your own. So you have to exert that same type of teaching with your own children. You do. Don't use force. Don't use frustration. You know, it does get frustrating, I'm sure. But what you have to understand is that these are the future generations of mankind. Everything that they're being programmed now is going to change the reality that we live in. So you have to always keep that in mind. And frustration, anger, punishment, torturing them by taking away their favorite things, that's definitely going to be something that sticks with them for the rest of their life. You want your kids to look at you as a friend as well, so that they can talk to you and not keep anything from you. And my kids do that. They sit down, they talk to me. Now, granted, my son still bosses me around, but he's learning, because when he finally realizes that, hey, this isn't going to get done if I don't do it myself, he learns a value. And values and morals are what the kids really desperately need in this world. So keep patient. And also with video games, with movies, you know, I can tell you a million things about what they should or shouldn't do, what's good and what's not for them. But what you really have to understand is that, you know, limit it. Don't restrain them. Limit it. Because you just tell them, fine, you want to look at this, this is what you want to put into your consciousness, then you can explore it and you can have that curiosity, but I'm not going to allow you to do this for more than 1 hour, because then that's too much. There has to be boundaries. You teach them boundaries and you teach them morals, values. So that's the way that you parent, and in doing so, you gain their trust, you gain the kindness, the friendship, the relationships, while you're still teaching them by giving examples, by making them do things themselves, and then they always remember the kindness and the patience that you showed them, and that will come later, even if it doesn't seem now, and then they will be the same way out there in the world, and they'll grow up to be really good, patient, kind, considerate, gentle people. And not only that, but you can also say that, you know, when you spend a lot of quality time with your child, because you can't just say, no, not right now, I'm busy, later on. You can't do that, because that's making them feel unwanted. And when children feel unwanted and you're not using the patience and you're not giving them that time to fight with them, you're fighting with them, but you're fighting for them. No, you can say it a million times, but you're going to do this yourself. You have to learn. You have to use that method in everything, because you're teaching them strength. You're teaching them courage. But most of all, you have to spend time with your child. You have to sit down, even if it's 15 to 20 minutes a day. You sit down, you teach your child, you talk to your child, tell them spiritual things. Don't sit and read in a book. They're not going to get it that way. Don't show them videos, because then their mind's going to go off in another direction 3 minutes into the video. Just tell them, word of mouth. Little tiny fractals at a time. You sit down and say, how was your day at school today? How was yours? Oh, I had a good day. I meditated. I cleared out my mind. And then, you know, you continue talking about other things. You slip things in there as they go. It's very influential, and it will build up. And throughout time, when they're older, all of this is going to come around full circle to make them productive members of this reality, as well as spiritual beings with character, value, and respect. So thanks for watching. I love you all so very much. This means a lot to me to do this for you. I hope you enjoyed the clarity of the camera. And sorry for fidgeting around a little bit. Kind of have to hold it up, and then my arm was getting tired. So love and light to you. I'll see you all next video.